Good morning.
So the last Dharma talk of the session is now. And we've been considering Bodhidharma and Bodhidharma's teachings of mind on the mind itself is Buddha. The Bodhidharma's teachings are trying to wake us up to our own searching. They are trying to wake us up to our driven quest to find ourselves and to hold up a mirror in front of ourselves so that we can see. And this mirror is like Buddha nature because it is neither for nor against what it sees. It literally just reflects what it sees. So this mirror is very much like a good metaphor for our true nature, or for Buddha nature. That the mirror just does one thing. It's just there. Whatever appears in the mirror appears there and is reflected. When it goes, it's no longer reflected. It has infinite possibilities, this mirror. It's like space. Anything that appears in it will be reflected back. The mirror image is an interesting one in Dharma teaching. This mirror image is one like, it's like your true nature. Whatever appears in it simply appears and can be accommodated within that true nature. It's a bit like the Greek idea in Greek philosophy, early Greek philosophy, that knowledge was something you had already, you just had to rediscover it, that it was already innate. However, the other interesting use of the mirror image in teaching the Dharma is that the mirror can become something almost like mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all? Is that Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs? And this idea is that the reflection ultimately is just a reflection. So here's the image is being used in a different way. And that this reflection is not the real thing. So at that point, the mirror needs to be broken. At that point, the reflection needs to be cut through. So, the real you isn't the images of you, the labyrinth of images of you out there. In one way. In another way, they're part of you. In a culture obsessed by the image of self, by Facebook and Instagram and social media, where we're constantly indulging in the mirror of self. Constantly indulging in the mirror of self. We forget that this flesh and blood is it. This is the real thing. This breathing body. This I. So two interesting uses of the word mirror. This second use of the mirror is the understanding that the I cannot see itself. That the I can never see itself. You can never see yourself. How do you appear to others? You can guess, but you will never really know. You will never really know. A Buddha does not know themselves as Buddha. The I cannot see itself. We can only see a reflection of ourselves in a mirror and get some approximation. So because the copy is never the original, we're into a problem of representation. We are encountering the impossibility of representation. which is very, very frustrating for the artist. Because the artist's job is to represent, is to paint, to make films, etc., take photographs, write poetry. So these poems and films and photographs and drawings, that's gone, doesn't matter. These things are like the sutras. They're trying to convey the truth rather than being the truth. So all great artists know this. They know the impossibility of their endeavour. You read artists' biographies and memoirs sometimes, and they never seem satisfied with what they've created in one way. It's a terrible trap of dissatisfaction. But it never ceases to achieve. It never, for the artist, they never finally achieve that masterwork. And that's because it's ungraspable. That's because what they are trying to endeavour to do is impossible. But totally worthwhile. A totally worthwhile endeavour nonetheless. A totally... because it does convey some truth. It does... Although falling short, it does tell us something. It does teach us something. And this is the same with the sutras and the teachings. So you could say that these Dharma teachings are operating on at least two levels. And they're operating on the level whereby even to open one's mouth is a mistake. For me to give this Dharma talk, to try and from this mind to your mind make some connection and communication between as it's transmitted, there will be interference. Between the radio transmitter and the receiver, the radio tuning in. There's a lot of static in there. The static is the static of culture, of karma, of political points of view, of religious points of view, of strongly held convictions, of experiences that have been formulated through personal and cultural experience, etc. Okay. So the medium of transmission, the conduit for communication, muddies it. And we know this. We know this because we have arguments with our friends. We know this because we have arguments. We know this because we have disagreements. Someone want to get the phone? Maybe it's, I don't know, it's probably someone's cleaning up their breakfast. But anyway, so we know that this communication can be problematic, and that it breaks down, and that we have arguments. And sometimes you find yourself in an argument and everyone's getting very passionate, and at the end you go, well, often it ends in two ways. It ends in, fuck you, okay? Or else it ends in, but actually we agreed all the time. That's what I meant. That's what I was saying. So the dance that had the dance of argument, cut and thrust of opinion and point of view has just created, has emerged out of some kind of misunderstanding. So this really is clearly what Bodhidharma understands. He really understands this, and so does Shakyamuni Buddha, and so does attention. One day the world honoured one ascended the platform and took his seat. Manjusri struck the sounding board and said, when you realize the Dharma King's Dharma, the Dharma King's Dharma is just as is. At that, the world-honoured one descended from the platform. Do you see the true manner of the primal stage? Anyway. So imagine you go to a lecture, you go to a lecture in university, or you go to a public talk, and maybe you pay an admission fee and you go in and you sit down and someone comes onto the stage and then they leave the stage. I'm not buying this shit. This is a waste of my time. This is a waste of my money. What was that? Beckett used this Zen type aesthetic and approach and understanding in lots of his theatre, actually. Lots of Samuel Beckett's theatre involves confounding our expectations that the empty space will be filled with something that satisfies our desires and our wants as an audience. That's why sometimes when I'm giving a Dharma talk, I like to begin by saying, please expect to be disappointed by what I have to say. Don't expect a good Dharma talk, because probably won't be anyway. So, enter the space, you leave the space. So Buddha did this. Shakyamuni taught like this sometimes, where people would sit around and he would sit. That was it. Everything that appears in the three realms comes from the mind. Hence Buddhas of the past and future teach mind to mind without bothering about definitions. Whoever sees his nature is a Buddha. Whoever doesn't is immortal. If you attain anything at all, it's conditional, it's karmic. It turns the wheel. So we're back to these two levels of the teachings, these two levels that the teachings are operating on. When Emperor Wu was told that his good actions attain no merit whatsoever, Bodhidharma is talking, of course, about one of the levels of existence, Because in the Bloodstream Sutra, in the Bloodstream Sermon, he also says that these good actions bring you blessings, that on the realm of karma, on the level of karma, they are operating. So he is not denying that level of understanding, that karmic level of understanding. So he is not denying that if you are kind and compassionate, that this is karmically positive. And if you are lazy and selfish and deceitful and aggressive, that this is karmically bad for you. And of course there's the neutral karma as well. So he's not denying that kind of wheel of dharma, of karma. But he's trying to point beyond that. He's trying to break that chain. He's trying to cut through that and say the unconditioned, that which is not subject to external conditions, that which is unshakable, that which has no birth and no death, that which is your true self that has never been born and will never die. That which is your true self beyond the beginning of the universe. Because there is no beginning in the Buddhist understanding. There is just contraction and expansion and contraction. So he just to ensure that we understand that point, he hammers it home. Still others commit all sorts of evil deeds. Still others commit all sorts of evil deeds, claiming karma doesn't exist. They erroneously maintain that since everything is empty, committing evil isn't wrong. Such persons fall into a hell of endless darkness with no hope of release. Those who are wise hold no such conception. So he's quite clear there. So earlier on he said, Buddhas don't keep precepts and Buddhas don't break precepts. Buddhas neither keep nor break precepts. So again, the subtlety of the teaching is dangerous. Actually, it's volatile stuff. It's dynamite, because what happens is people run off with half of the understanding. They run away with emptiness and sunyata, and they are intoxicated by emptiness, and it leads to a kind of nihilism, right? Where nothing matters, nothing really exists, everything is meaningless, therefore everything is permitted. That's the kind of rationality that leads to the gas chambers. 80 years ago, as we were reminded yesterday, when myself and Hodo went down to Dublin Castle to meet the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister of Ireland, and a woman from one of the Christian churches. Lutheran Church, yeah. A woman from the Lutheran Church reminded us of a culture unchecked by essentially precepts. And she reminded us, with the rabbi sitting opposite her, the Rabbi of Ireland, that it was only 80 years ago that the gas chambers happened. So this kind of logic is very dangerous. This kind of teaching is very dangerous. Bodhidharma's teaching, because it is so clearly open to be misunderstood. If you think about the conduct of the Japanese army during World War II, for example, on the mainland, it was beyond murderous. It was very disturbing. And what's equally disturbing is that at times the Bodhidharma was being invoked as a reason to permit this, because there's no self, there's no you or I, there's no true reality, everything is empty, the precepts themselves are empty. For those who are living at this higher Aryan level of existence, almost. So, total misunderstanding. Because it's taking half of the story and running with that. I had a student once who, in Dokusan, no matter what I said, or no matter where our discussion went, would not release that idea. He was totally besotted by emptiness and under its spell, and he simply couldn't hear anything else, and well, he had a lot of difficulties after that, and I never saw him again, unfortunately. I hope he's all right wherever he is.
Are these people unteachable, did you say before?
Sorry?
Did you say before these people are unteachable if they get caught in that trap?
Well, last year what came up is what Wayne On said is... Wayne On said that, yes, they are unteachable. He said, only a fool would try and teach them. So he was quite clear on that there are, you will meet people whose karma is such a burden for them that they're not ready to hear certain teachings yet, you know. That's what Wayne On says in the Platform Sutra, yeah. So that came up last year, yeah.
Well, in the Guardian, we said though that those that believe in emptiness are foolish. So maybe you're thinking of that, Vincent.
Yeah, in the Madhyamaka, he neither affirms nor denies either of the two positions, which is what infuriates the Western Academy of philosophers in the West, because they wanted a thesis. They want a thesis to be arrived at. So so he is reminding us that this is an error, a serious error. Why don't we see this mind when a person's body dies? The mind is always present. You just don't see it, he says. It's interesting. So this obviously is seen as beyond birth and death. This true self. This true self. Some people think, of course, the Yogacara belief in the eighth consciousness, that it is smuggling the soul back into Buddhism through the back door. So that is a debate, because Buddhism says there is no essential soul to each person, but in the Yogacara philosophy of Buddhism there's 8 levels of consciousness, and that last one, Alaya Vajna, what's it called again?
Alaya Vajnana.
Alaya Vajnana. Vajnana.
Split.
Nana.
Split
Right.
consciousness.
I can never remember these terms, so thank you for that. Alaya Vajnana, I probably mispronounced. And so this is where seeds, your karmic seeds are stored for future rebirths, and there's an argument that this is bringing the soul back in through the back door. But if it isn't, and what you're doing and saying, let's see, and is what you're doing and saying different from you? No, it isn't. But if it isn't, then this body is your real body, and this real body is your mind. And this mind, though endless, through endless kalpas, without beginning, has never varied. It has never lived or died, appeared or disappeared, increased or decreased. It's not pure or impure. It's not good or evil, past or future. It's not true or false. It's not male or female. It doesn't appear as a monk or a layman. An elder or a novice, a sage or a fool, a Buddha or a mortal. So this true self is beyond all distinctions. Beyond all distinctions. So the very first time you sit zazen is as much zazen as the very last time you sit zazen. Because zazen, again, is like space, is like, there can't be better space or worse space. There isn't, we talk about there being more space in a flat, but space itself, there is no more space or less space. We need more space. So, but in reality, space is not quantifiable. It is just space. So this is like your true self. You possess it, and you can't lose it. So, if one of you went crazy and killed the rest of us with a knife, right, and slit all our throats, if Magda finally cracked, if the Zen retreat finally drove her over the edge, and you slit my throat and put my head on a post outside Jampolin, yeah, and beat my dying corpse with my own Kyosaku, if you did all that, you would still have Buddha nature.
Remember that.
Yeah.
You remember that.
And let me hastily add, others commit all sorts of evil deeds, Magda, claiming karma doesn't exist. They earnestly maintain that since everything is empty, committing evil isn't wrong. Such persons fall into a hell of endless darkness with no hope of release. Those who are wise hold no such conception. But this mind is subtle and hard to see. It's not the same as the sense mind, the sensual mind. Maybe mind is a bad word for it, you know. Maybe mind is a bit confusing, you know. We think mind.
Yeah.
So are we talking about an experience beyond the skandhas, beyond the sensual experience that we all meditate on?
Yes and no. Yes and no, because what did he say back here? This might clarify it. Our mortal nature is our Buddha nature. He's only touching on it there. Somewhere around here he says... So, no, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So, what if you say that this is beyond our sense experiences, in a way you're slicing away the material there. You're making a move that Abrahamic religions make. Okay? That means you're getting a sharp knife and you're saying, we're going to cut the material and put it over here. And that's where the realm of senses exists, right? And over here is the realm of spirit, of eternal soul, and the spirit. And so what you're trying to do there, I'm not saying you're trying to do it, what you're asking the question about is what Hodo was talking about there, which is Nagarjuna's teaching, that he won't deny the sense, which is the Zen teaching, won't deny the material sensual world, and simultaneously the world of spirit, if you will.
But they're not distinct in Buddhism.
You're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They are both distinct and not distinct. So, and I know that you're not happy with that answer, but that awkward, ill-fitting answer is, in the Zen, from a Zen perspective, the truth. Look at that finger. Ooh, look at that ceiling. Do you want to come back to me on that?
So the skandhas, it seems within that we have to find what we're talking about. So the distinction as it exists is not beyond that, it is within that. That is where we draw the distinction. Otherwise that's not Buddhism we're talking about.
Who cares what Buddhism is? Fuck Buddhism. What do you think, Vincent?
I think the duality of sense and spirit is wrong. It's my own belief. I can't prove
Okay.
it.
No, I don't care what you believe in.
I think emptiness is within our experience. It's within our sensual feeling.
What's your experience? Tell me what your experience is.
a subtle feeling. It's not always there, but a subtle feeling behind. Behind is even the wrong word. Things in themselves. It's like the Tantra teaching are perfect. Are perfect, and when you experience that, there's a perfection to the mundane things that you don't see that often. You see it more with practice, and it's subtle, but it's very powerful, and it's certainly the truth. And that's my experience. I don't know how to phrase it in doctrinal terms.
I don't care about doctrine. I want you to say it in Neil Maddox's terms.
Yeah, the world is perfect, and we can't see it most of the time. And when we practice, we begin to see the perfection of everything.
Thank you. I love that teaching, Vincent. Really nice, the perfection of everything. So then a paedophile comes along and rapes a couple of children, as it isness.
In a certain sense, yes, the thusness is present at that moment too.
Okay.
In a certain sense.
Right.
But in an absolute sense, there is perfection in all those things. Even in the gas chambers, there is perfection. The world is perfect. And in a relative sense, there is horror. But both of those things are true.
So, things as they are exactly as they are. And we see that. I think perfection is a dangerous word because we make...
That's my clumsy way of phrasing it.
No, I'm just trying to clarify, that's all. Clarify the point. That perfection is a dangerous word because it's a judging word. You see why the Tathagata ascends the Dharma seat and manifests pure being and then descends the Dharma seat? Because look at the problem of our interchange. Look at the problem of perfection. Yeah. So what's really important is the reason I challenged you on the perfection with that horrible example of someone of an abuser is because we need to wake up to. We can't fall in love with this Buddhist idea of emptiness. We need to wake up to the karmic reality of evil being done. Let me just put it that way. Of actual evil. And we have to understand that. We can't unpack the karmic from that. That's my point. And I think it's not my point, it's Bodhidharma's point in this sutra. Thank you.
Sensei, may I?
Please.
Going back to the the mirror.
Yeah.
And if I understood correctly, it's like a kind of two modes of relationship toward experience. And could you please relate that to what Dogen says, to study the ways, to study the self, to study the self is to forget the self. Then the next bit, the affirming or non-affirming.
Of the myriad things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you
I'll
expand
try.
on that and relate it?
Okay. Thank you. So the Buddha way. Yeah, the Buddha way. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. Dogen, by the way, Dogen is setting a trap for himself here, right? Because he's falling back into the graduated approach of understanding. The irony of it. Okay. So Dogen denies that there is a path, steps to enlightenment, right? Dogen says that that you're already enlightened, right? You have enlightenment, okay? So, but setting that aside, the circle of the way, let us unpick this process. To study the Buddha way is to study the self. So we begin with what we got. We begin with this. We begin with our karma, with our history, with our likes and our dislikes, our loves and our angers, our opinions and our dispositions. Okay? And sitting in Zazen over a long period of time, usually, but time doesn't matter actually, but usually over a long period of time, all this karma plays out, and we begin to see it for what it is. And we begin to see its conditioned nature, and we begin, in a way, in a mundane way, we begin to know ourselves. So you could relate that to approaches in psychology, you could relate it to listening to your inner voice, you could relate it to going to therapy, to a therapist listening to you, except you are listening to what emerges in the mind and body and heart. And in the body, don't forget the body. What's emerging in the field of experience? What are we smelling, tasting, touching? What are the skandhas bringing in? The skandhas are the doorway. And so this is to study the Buddha way is to study the self. And then to study the self is to forget, the next stage is to forget the self. So going beyond that, there is an encounter with emptiness, an encounter with sunyata. Let me rephrase it. There's the beginnings, I suppose, of an encounter with boundlessness. You know, that the self, you begin to move beyond the self. So if you think of a child wants food, wants milk, wants sleep, wants this, I want that toy, I want that. Okay, so first it's self. And then it's self in family, and then it's self in society, and self in the world. So there's kind of an analogy of growing up, I suppose, here. So beyond one's self, there is the forgetting of self. And so this is the beginnings of the encounter with sunyata, with emptiness, with true nature, with things as they are. And then the self is verified by the myriad things. So here's another...
The self is verified?
And let me get the exact thing. I have it here. I'm not sure how it's translated, but of course
one is from your own experience. One
is talking about this entity, whatever this entity is. Do you know what I mean? So I probably have the Shobogenzo here. There's no harm in getting the original. Yeah, let's see. Let's get the original here. No harm in that. Sorry, if you don't mind bearing with me for a second. There's a long introduction.
Is it in the Fukan?
It's in the Genjo. Go on, I think. Sorry, 1 second. Oh yeah, here we go. They've translated it differently here. Yeah. To carry the self forward and illuminate myriad things is delusion. That myriad, oh no, that's a different. Look, I can't find it, but okay.
I think in the line, the Nishijima translation is to study the self is to forget the self, and the line is then is to forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things.
Yeah.
Actualized.
To forget the self.
Okay.
Is
to be actualized by
so
myriad
actually
things.
put an object in there. In the sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think another translation is to be verified.
Be verified.
Verified. Yeah.
But then there's an opposite to that. I've heard it phrased in a way that made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
When the self advances, the 10,000 things retreat.
Yeah.
When the self retreats,
The-
the 10,000 things advance.
Okay. And what happens after that?
There is deep connection and appreciation and vital living.
Okay. And what happens after that? Ah, there we're there. Now we're there. That's it. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Sensei.
Yeah.
Just while we were talking there, I was thinking of actually something from the Pali Canon that the Buddha said. He said that all of our practice lies within this fathom-long body. And it just struck me that there's still a sense that there's a lot of ideas here. That maybe what Shakyamuni was saying was that it's just our experience that counts. Because I just feel when you get into the sort of the discussions that come out of these concepts, and things like the gas chambers are mentioned, or the perfection of the world, that we're immediately in trouble. And there's just something so simple about that statement that the Buddha himself made, because it's not about ideas, and I find that very inspiring.
Yeah, it's always pointing back to the present moment. That's what it is. In a way, that's where we started. That's where I started this Dharma talk. Was so I think we're making a nice circle here, actually. That we have arguments with our friends. Be it me, Germany, and my friends, Poland, or whoever it is. We have arguments with our friends when that journey of discrimination, opinion, self, more than other, that's where it becomes a problem. And when we return to that end of the argument where we go, oh, we were saying the same thing all along, that's the moment of, oh, here we are now. That feels like the moment of, this is it, here it is, it's flowering right now, So yeah, that's a good way to end this Dharma talk. Thank you.